Hey everyone, how's it going? This is the Bald Metal Nerd coming at you with another awesome vid. Obviously, you read the title of this, so you know what it's going to be about. I've been doing a series of videos on collecting recently, and this one's going to be my general feelings about it and some other information. I had originally planned to not make this video because I originally recorded a few videos all on the same day about collecting, and I was going to upload them once per day. In fact, the video I was going to upload today was going to be basically what to do with your collection before you die, more or less. But and that was going to kind of round out the collection, but the collection, the collection of videos. But what inspired this video, honestly, are some of the responses I got on my previous video that I just did on this and uploaded yesterday. And I want to give a special shout out specifically to Gabrielle Fay. She left a really extensive comment on the video. So I'm going to respond to some of her points in this video and kind of talk about how I feel about collecting overall and some of my thoughts surrounding it and all that. One of the common themes that I got in response to that video, of course, is talking about nostalgia. Folks are saying, if they buy something that they had, 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was, that it's not the same, that they don't get that same nostalgic feeling. Well, nostalgia is kind of a funny thing, Nostalgia ain't like it used to be, right? And the reason I say that is because the reason you don't feel the same that you did back whenever you originally had the item is because things have changed since you've had the item. You are a completely different person, at least I hope you are, than you were 20 or 30 years ago, right? You've changed as a person. Your perspectives have changed. Your expectations have changed. The world has completely changed around you. Things that, were commonplace back then aren't now. So, that's just time marching on. And I have learned that chasing nostalgia tends to be a bit of a fool's errand. You're never going to recapture whatever feelings you had, decades ago. It's impossible. And a lot of regret has been spilled over, like, spending too much money on stuff to try to recapture that. So for me, nostalgia is somewhat of a factor in collecting, which I'll get to here in a moment. But it's definitely a hard to pin down, and you're probably never going to quite get it. So anyway, I'm going to read a little bit from what Gabrielle put in, and she said, basically, she said she's fascinated by collectors, and she can appreciate the work, passion, and care that goes into a good collection. And then she says something about, I understand this nostalgic feelings that a much-loved childhood object can evoke many years on into our adulthood, which we just kind of talked about. Essentially, I like to believe that is what drives every collector. It's not just about monetary value. So, okay, let's talk about my feelings on nostalgia a little bit specifically and what drives me. Like I said, nostalgia is probably part of why I collect, but it's definitely not my primary reason. I think we're just going to talk about music first because obviously that's mostly what I talk about on this channel. I'm not buying a copy of a brand new album, for example, right? Something that comes out in 2019. I'm not buying a copy of an album that comes out in 2019 because I'm nostalgic for that album because, well, it's a brand new album. Nothing to be nostalgic about there. The reason I'll buy it, honestly, mostly it's habit, right? I've been collecting music now since 1989. That is, let's see, 1989, that would be, 30 years at this point, right? So, I'm sorry, 1988, man. Or was it 89? 88, 89, so whatever. I'm losing track of time now. That's what happens when you get up there in age, right? So I've been collecting music for 30 or 31 years at this point, right? So quite a long time. I've been into the whole collecting of music. So don't know really what to say. It's habit for me. It's like I've always enjoyed collecting music, and it's just a habit I never gave up. You know, like I said, I got rid of my cassettes, but I never got rid of my CDs. So I was never like down to no music collection whatsoever. Now let's pretend that at some point in, say, I don't know, the mid 2000s or something, I had gotten rid of, you know, when MP3 players and smartphones really took off. If I had decided at that point to chuck my CDs and all that, would I still be collecting music nowadays if I had, you know, purged it back then? I'm not sure, honestly, if I would have picked that back up or not. Because I think I would have looked at the cost of collecting music again, and I probably would have been like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that again, right? It's not something that I'm going to try to reacquire. You know, another thing that I collect, you know, I've mentioned in many videos, I collect, you know, Transformers, right? I've been collecting them since, as an adult, for 20 years, since 1999. Jeez. And I've been doing it so long now that it's insane. Now, as far as the classic ones from my childhood, I own a very small handful of those. And most of the ones I own of those, basically were reissues. I was able to get basically brand new versions of them still in the box for a fairly reasonable cost. I have never bought a, quote, vintage one in its original box for hundreds of dollars. That's just a bridge too far for me. I'm not willing to drop a couple of $100 on something like that. That's just too much money for me to spend. So, just not something that's going to happen. So for me, the reason I collect those, yeah, it's definitely somewhat nostalgia because I really enjoyed it when I was a kid and I still enjoy it now. But and it can be done in, you know, small bits and pieces, right? I'm not spending hundreds of dollars at a time. Like typically they cost anywhere from, you know, $20 on the low end up to, for the really large ones, 150, $200. So again, that's a range. I realize that, but typically I'm towards the bottom of that range more than the top. So anyway, that's near the here. That's why I collect those. As far as video games go, well, I've just kept my video games that I've had through the years. I don't know how much of a collector I am of video games. I just have been really stubborn and haven't gotten rid of most of them. Like I said, I got rid of a fairly big NES and Game Boy collection when I was a kid, and I definitely regret that at this point, but I'm not looking to recreate those collections because it would be, excuse me, probably fairly expensive to recreate that, and I'm just not willing to drop the money on that because I can get the stuff, like I said, through emulation, so it's not worrying that. Okay, and let's talk about monetary value a little bit. Is there a, quote, monetary motivation? Not particularly. You know, I do think about the value of my stuff, right? Like, but it's certainly not, it's not the overriding reason why I collect. I do have some pieces that are worth some money. My most valuable one I have, at one point, I don't know if it's still worth this, by the way, or not, but at one point, one of my Transformers that I bought was worth, I think the most it was ever worth was $600 or $700, and that was definitely the most valuable anything I had in my any of my collections. I don't know if it's worth that now still, but I know it was at one time. But that's not why I bought it. I wasn't buying it hoping that it would go up in value. I bought it because I liked the item. I didn't pay that much for it, by the way. Not even close to that much. But I bought it because I liked it. The end, right? And as far as, like, do I hope to get a monetary return on this stuff in the future? Not necessarily. I don't worry too much about that. Like, I view it as, it would be nice to make some money on this, but it's definitely not what I would call essential. It's just kind of a nice bonus. And I realize that eventually the market for some of this stuff may bottom out and my stuff could lose all its value. So, Okay, the next question is, she said, she says, I'm wondering why you feel the need to cull or trim your collection as such. Do you have your own personal reasons, or are you feeling outside pressure to do so? I'm just curious as to the reason that led you to creating this vid. Okay, as far as trimming my collection down, I feel no outside pressure to do it. Basically, I have my collection confined to like one room in my house, uh, and there's my wife couldn't care less about my collection, so she's not pressuring me to get rid of it. I don't spend massive amounts of money on my collection. I'm very financially responsible with my collecting, so there's no real outside pressure making me want to do this. The reason I want to get rid of some stuff, honestly, is any collector knows this. You'll get stuff in your collection and you'll appreciate it for a while, but eventually it'll start to lose its luster, or you'll get items that are better than what you originally had, Uh, and you'll be like, wow, I have a better version of this same item, so this other version that's not as good can go. And I've just reached that point with a few things. I have some items that are better than other items I have, and I've just been thinking about selling some of the lesser items. And I think that's very common for many collectors. They'll have things and then they'll just upgrade some of the stuff in their collection. It's really as simple as that. That's currently why I'm considering doing it. Okay. And then she said, I'm wondering if you perhaps decide it's time to reevaluate your items, and perhaps led to realization you have two reasons for collecting. One being those items that bring you joy via feelings of nostalgia, and then there are those you collected mainly in the hope that one day they would be of some monetary gain. Perhaps some fall into both categories. That's a good point, Gabrielle, but again, mostly I buy the stuff just because I enjoy it. I've never really specifically bought anything because I was hoping that it would inflate in value. That really had nothing to do with any other reason that I've ever bought anything. I only buy stuff if I like it. If I don't like it, I'm not going to buy it because I don't want it in my collection taking up space if I don't like it. Right? So everything I've bought, I at least liked it or had some interest in it at the time. But of course, my interest can wane and then it can go. So let's see. And then she says, I can see that it would be a bit like investing in shares. You want to make sure you sell them when they're going to make you a nice profit. Well, that's a good point, but I would never, ever, ever suggest to anyone at any point that they should collect things in the hope of making a profit, because it's an extremely unpredictable market, and it would be a really foolish way to invest money. If anyone collects, don't do it because you're hoping to make money. Do it because you like it. If you happen to make money, that's a nice side bonus. But with the volatility of the markets of collectibles, I would definitely never suggest seeing this as any sort of an investment. The stuff I invest in is, well, I have a 401k just like about almost everyone else in the U.S. I see my house as an investment, as something that appreciates. There are definitely better things you can invest money in than trivial things that you collect. And then she says, okay, she says, what do I hope to... Then she said, I suggest you ask yourself some questions that may help you with your process. What do I hope to achieve, and what does that look like? Usually, if you have a visual of your goal, then it makes it seem more doable. It's hard to create something we can't imagine. Good point. Really, I don't have one overarching goal. I guess my biggest goal would just to go through my collection and kind of assess what I do and don't want to keep. That's kind of step one. And I've yet to do that. So how do I hope to feel once I accomplish my set goal? Well, all that it'll do is hopefully it'll get me a couple of bucks and make room for me to buy more crap for my collection. Because I'm not to the point yet where I'm ready to really get rid of my collection. The next one, am I honestly ready to start the process? If not, will I perhaps be ready in the near distant future? Do I need more time? Yeah, I'm absolutely ready to get rid of some of my stuff. Because, again, it's the whole Marie Kondo thing. If it doesn't bring you joy, maybe it's time for it to go. Will I regret letting go of some things? How can I protect myself now from feeling it may regret in the future? Well, you know, that's honestly, I won't regret letting some of this, if I know that I don't have interest in the item anymore, letting it go. And if I know if I can get a decent price out of it, like roughly what it's worth, that will let me completely avoid the feelings of regret. So what's the next thing she put down? And then she just basically put some kind of side, like some sub stuff in there. So anyway, that's pretty much it. So anyway, just to summarize real quick my feelings on collecting. The primary reason I do it purely is enjoyment, right? That's it. I like collecting this stuff. It's a fun hobby, and that is my primary reason for doing it. And I think that should be the reason anyone does this. Nobody, in my opinion, should collect for any sort of monetary gain because that's very foolhardy. And who knows what the market will look like for collectible kind of frivolous items. Terrible investment. But if you can make some money on it, great. Keep it if you don't let it take over your life, right? If you have a family and you spend all your money on collectible items and you're, if it's out of control and you're not paying bills because you're wanting to buy stuff, you got a problem. So, or if it's taking up your entire home, these are things to think about. You definitely want to make it sure it remains a pleasurable part of your life and not something that completely takes it over or is some sort of a detriment to you. And if you can make a few bucks on it, that's great. So anyway, that is pretty much it. Thanks so much for sitting through this and listening to me talk about it. I hope you guys liked it. As always, if you like this, thumbs up. If you hate me, thumbs down. Share, subscribe. It's free. It's easy. And boy, is it ever collectible. That's it. As always, thanks so much for watching. Live long and prosper.